Have you ever noticed how much of life feels like one giant report card? And when you think about it, from the moment we're old enough to understand success and failure, we are being measured. Schools give grades. Your work gives evaluations. Social media gives us likes. Businesses, they track metrics. Companies track performance. People compare incomes. Parents compare their children. Leaders compare results. And after enough years of living in that environment, something begins to happen. We stop seeing grades as something we receive. We start seeing grades as who we are. Every success becomes proof we're valuable, and every mistake becomes proof that we're not. Every failure feels very personal, and every setback feels like it's a final verdict. Eventually, we begin living life like it's a test, and it's a test that we are afraid of failing, a test we're convinced that we are not prepared for, a test that seems like it has consequences attached to every single answer. Maybe you've felt that. Maybe you know exactly what I'm talking about here. You make one mistake, and suddenly you are questioning yourself. You miss a goal, and suddenly you're questioning your future. You disappoint someone, and suddenly you're questioning your worth. I've done it. In fact, I still catch myself doing it. But what if we've misunderstood something really important? What if life is not a test? What if it's training? And that's what I want to talk to you about today. Hey, welcome to Pilot Light. I am your host, Josh. And you know what? Most people are not looking for another self-help podcast. They are looking for a reminder of who they are, a reminder of what matters, a reminder that their story is not over. So wherever you're listening from, whether you are driving from work, mowing the lawn, sitting at your desk, or trying to catch your breath after a really long day, hey, I want to thank you for being here, and let's light that pilot light together. A few days ago, I found myself really frustrated over something that honestly was not a big deal at all. I had made a mistake. Nothing catastrophic. Nobody got hurt. The world did not stop spinning. I made a mistake, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. I don't know if you've ever done that before, and where you replay it, you analyze it, you think about what you should have done, you think about what you could have done, you think about how you could have prevented it. And before long, you're really thinking not about the mistake anymore. You're thinking about what the mistake means. And that's where I found myself. And the more I sat with it, the more I realized something, that I wasn't upset about the mistake I made. I was upset because somewhere deep down, I felt like the mistake was a reflection on me. Not what I did, but who I was. And that's when I caught myself, because I realized that I was treating the situation like a test, as if the mistake was evidence, as if the mistake had somehow revealed my value, as if one imperfect moment had somehow determined my worth. And that's when this idea came flooding back. Life isn't a test. It is training, because training expects mistakes. Training assumes growth. Training understands development. Tests determine worthiness. Training develops capability. And that distinction changes everything. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how often we confuse mistakes with identity. We think, I failed, so that means I am a failure. Or I made a mistake, that means I am completely incompetent. Or I struggled, that means I'm weak. But those things, they're not the same. And a mistake is something that you did. It's not who you are. A struggle is something that you are experiencing. It is not your identity. A failure is an event. It is not a verdict. And when we confuse those things, we begin to carry burdens we were never meant to carry. So here's the big idea on this. And here's what I've come to believe. Most people are living life like they are taking a test. And God is inviting them into training. Think about how differently those two environments operate. A test is about proving. Training is about improving. A test is about evaluation. However, training is about development. A test focuses on performance. Training focuses on progress. A test asks you, did you get it right? Training asks, what are you learning? That is a radically different way to live, because when life becomes a test, fear takes over. Fear of failure, fear of embarrassment, fear of criticism, fear of rejection, fear of looking foolish, fear of not measuring up. But training creates something different. Training creates growth. Training creates resilience. Training creates wisdom. Training creates confidence, because mistakes aren't evidence of failure. They're evidence that you're learning. Here's what tests do. They create fear. And I want you to think about the areas where you're most afraid to fail. Why does failure feel so threatening? Because most of us have attached identity to performance. If I fail, what does it say about me? If I struggle, what does that say about me? If I do not succeed, what does that say about me? Those questions create an enormous amount of pressure. And pressure has a way of shrinking people. People stop taking risks. People stop trying new things. People stop stepping into opportunities. People stop pursuing dreams. Not because they lack ability, it's because they're afraid of failing the test. And fear has probably stolen more potential than failure ever has. Training creates growth. Now think about how athletes train. Think about musicians. Think about pilots. Think about military personnel. Training environments, those assume mistakes. Nobody expects perfection. In fact, mistakes are part of the process. The purpose of training isn't perfection. It is preparation. I want you to think about this for a moment. Imagine a coach watching an athlete make a mistake during the practice and saying, "Well, that's it. You're done. Clearly, you have never been good enough." That sounds absolutely ridiculous. Yet many of us talk to ourselves exactly that same way. One mistake, one setback, one bad day, and suddenly we begin to question everything. What if we gave ourselves the same grace that we would give to someone else? What if growth was actually allowed? What if learning was expected? What if training wasn't proof that you were failing? And what if it was proof that you were developing? See, God cares about formation. One of the most encouraging things in Scripture is how God works through imperfect people. If you look through things, Moses needed 40 years in the wilderness. David spent years hiding in caves. Joseph spent years in prison. Peter failed publicly. The disciples misunderstood Jesus over and over again, and yet God continued to shape them, develop them, train them, form them. Why? Because God appears to be far more interested in formation than in performance. He's not looking for polished. He's looking for transformed. He's not looking for perfection. He's looking for growth. He's not looking for people who never struggle. He's looking for people who are willing to keep growing. And that should be incredibly encouraging for us, because none of us are finished products. We are still in training. So when you look in the mirror with me here real quick, and I'm going to ask you a few questions. Where in your life are you treating things like a test? Are you looking at that in your marriage, your parenting, your leadership, your faith, your health, your finances? What areas are you treating them like a test? What area of your life feels like you're constantly being graded? And what would change if you viewed that same situation as training instead? What if this season isn't evaluating you? What if it's developing you? What if this challenge isn't proof you're failing? What if it's evidence that you're growing? Sit in that for a moment, because that perspective might change everything. So here's your challenge this week. Every time something goes wrong, I want you to pause. Before frustration takes over, before self-criticism takes over, before that shame takes over, and I want you to ask yourself one simple question. What is this training me for? Not why is this happening to me? How many, I don't know how many have heard the people do that. Why is this happening to me? I don't understand. Why is this happening to me? What if we change that to what is this training me for? Because I truly believe, and based on the things I've walked through in life, it is not about why it's happening to me. It is what is it doing in me? What is it training me for? What strength is being built? What is it teaching me? What character is being formed? What wisdom am I gaining? Because when you start asking better questions, you begin finding better answers. And I want to challenge you with that, because it changes with our thinking about stuff. That if we look at every setback as those moments of where it's being discouraging or we failed a test rather than it developing something in us we've already lost. But God saying, no, I'm training you up for something greater. So I want to close with this. Maybe the goal was never perfection. Maybe the goal was formation. Maybe God isn't standing over you with a clipboard waiting to assign a grade. Maybe he's walking beside you like a coach. Man, just take that image in for a moment, because I think a lot of us have our relationship with God backwards in how he sees us. We look at him and we think he's got this scorecard just waiting to nail us with things. But I think he's more like a coach. He's walking alongside us, and as we have given him the opportunity to speak into our lives, he'll do that. He wants to teach us. He wants to guide us. He wants to correct us. He wants to encourage us. He's developing us. He's training us, because a test ends with a score. Training ends with transformation. Trust me, God's more interested in your transformation than grading you. And one day you're going to look back and realize that the seasons you thought you were being evaluating were actually preparing you. The struggles, the setbacks, the mistakes, the failures, the disappointments, they were not proof that you were falling behind. They were part of the training, part of the formation, part of becoming the person that God was shaping you to be. I want you to just think about that for a moment and change your perspective this week. Hey, thanks for spending a few moments with me today. If this episode encouraged you, send it to someone who might need it. And remember, you don't need to become somebody else. You need to become more fully who you were created to be. So keep the pilot line on, and I'll see you next time.